Good morning, everybody. This is spring in northern Minnesota, first week of April. You can see it's raining right now and we have quite a bit of snow. We're going to head on in to the farm. Maybe 20 inches of snow on the ground right now. You can see one of the high tunnels on our left. We might go for a little tour on those later. There's two more high tunnels. And then here's the processing building. Oh, look at that. And there's Sarah inside. Go walk inside.
Yeah. Well, I'm Sarah. I'm a farmer. And I farm here at Wolf Ridge Farm. I've been here just over a year, which it feels like longer, and a lot has happened in that 1 year. The food that we produce here goes to the dining hall most of the time. We also snack on it. We share extras with the folks who are working down here, which is great because we should all taste what we're producing. It's quality control, really. But yeah, the farm was designed to produce as much of the food possible for the dining hall, for the folks that eat here at Wolf Ridge, experience our programs. And it's also here not just for production but for education. So we do classes, the folks come down from the ridge. It's just under a 2-mile hike. We welcome them with open arms because actually they're partially our labor force. Some unskilled, some skilled, and that's fine because we're here to teach. So we do anything that needs to be done. So we don't necessarily create extra projects. We don't need to do that, which I think is extra special because the participants get to do what farmers do. And then I think the experience is richer. So they're providing food when they're here for themselves and others, and I mean, what could be more powerful than that? Feeding other people. I don't think there is much more powerful than that. Let's see. So yeah, that's really our purpose here, is to produce food and to educate others. And also along the way, sort of develop this resilient, these are all, sustainable farm. And I think, well, yeah, people ask, well, what does that mean? We hear those words a lot. Well, I think in a time like this, especially, resiliency is one of the most important focus points for us. With COVID-19, we have to be extra resilient and mindful of how we're producing food. And we have to think about, okay, maybe we don't have the population that we're serving at this time, so we have to adapt, just like everyone is adapting at home. So who can we feed? What can we grow with the least amount of resources possible, including labor? It's hard to imagine, but how can we, increase our efficiency even more? And we can. So some of the things we're adapting to with right now, some of our strategies, we're still educating. So our second-year naturalists are still involved in the farm, which is great. I'm here, which is also great. The organization is really seeing food and providing for ourselves and local food especially as a priority. which feels really good to all of us. It makes us feel a little bit more in control. And yeah, but it's still a bit wintry here, even though it's spring. So we've been producing some microgreens, and we're doing that because we can produce those inside with little resources. So we have seed, we have soil, which is just a germination mix that we're using for all of our starts. The crop plan, which guides our farming season, is still in place. We're still planning on producing about the same amount of food. And so we have the setup. We have the grow lights. We don't necessarily have a greenhouse, but we have grow lights. We have a constant temperature in here. We have a germination chamber so we can start the seeds as efficient as possible with the optimal moisture and temperature. So it's the chamber's secrets, but we keep tabs on what goes in and what comes out. We chart the temperature of the chamber. We like to keep it fairly constant at about 80 degrees. It's all written here. So all our starts, except for a few that like light, go in here because it's completely dark. So that's where they start. That's where everything starts. But this is, it's a foam box with just with a baker's rack. That's all it is, with a roasting pan of water below. It's these simple things that make our jobs as farmers just so much easier and faster. And in the end, this saves us money. I mean, this foam box is great. Yeah, that's great. So, as I've been talking about our starts and our microgreens, we also use this resource. It's a flat. They're very simple. They've been around the farm for a long time. It's plastic. And we don't like to throw plastics away, so we mend them. We use duct tape, and over time they get cracks and things like that. And yeah, it's probably cheaper to buy a new tray than to maybe take the time to repair them. But ultimately, this would go in the landfill, and we want to keep them out of the landfill, and they're definitely reusable. Not ideal, but they work. But these are all our trays for the microgreens. And if we look at some examples here, we do a lot of pea shoots. This is an example of a flat of pea shoots that just came out of the germination chamber this morning. And you can see that they're wanting light, so they're very yellow. So they'll green up within a day. The peas themselves, they're really tight in the flat, and that gives us a lot of production, about 2 pounds of pea shoots per flat. And you can see they're wanting to bust out of the flat, so we can kind of get a kick out of their roots that are reaching for water through the bottom. And these pea shoots are really strong, so I can press my hand down on these quite a bit. And the reason they're strong is that we put weight on them. We stack the flats, and it makes the shoots push and get stronger. They will, after they're harvested, they'll last longer in storage. So we can probably store them as a cut green for, I would say, 2 weeks in the refrigerator, which is really great. Some of the more dainty microgreens, like our brassicas, so things like red Russian kale, Mizuna, this is Mizuna, tiny little guys, have dainty little stems. They won't last quite as long, maybe a week at tops. So it's nice if you can grow these at home. Now we bottom water all of these, so all we have to do is in the tray, let them sit for, these probably take 10 minutes tops. We take them out to drain, and then back under the lights. But pretty simple. These trays are made for this sort of thing, and it saves us a lot of time, and it saves us any damping off of the seedlings as they're growing. So just some little things we're doing with the microgreens right now. The staff and the naturalists that are on site are are benefiting from the harvest. We haven't quite figured out maybe where we can go with this. I think sky might be the limit as far as supplying community members with microgreens in a direct market situation. So maybe we could keep funding this enterprise. So we'll see. Right now we're just sort of fine-tuning all of the specs surrounding the production. So little things like seed density and how much medium we use and what kind. We have 2 different kinds, so how rich of a soil do we really need for the microgreens to be at their healthiest and most productive. So working on that, and we keep the data. We transplanted our tomatoes yesterday, so these came out of an open tray like this. Sam and Caroline put them into their individual cells. So they'll grow on in these cells for maybe 2 to 3 weeks, and then they'll get transplanted even into a larger pot, something like this, a 4-inch pot like that. But they've just been soaking here for a bit, so after they soak, they go onto the table to drip a little bit before we put them under the lights again. So we'll, total we planted, maybe about 400 tomato seeds, and we can fill 1 tunnel with about 400, so I think we probably padded it and planted over 400. So this building that we're standing in is sort of our hub. It's our beehive, and it's constantly buzzing in every season. And this is where it starts. The seeds that are started here, eventually these racks become drying racks for onions in the fall. We've got our cooler here. Everything that needs to be chilled out of the field comes here and then up to the dining hall. We have a kitchen. It's certified. We process a lot of what we produce here. And in this time of year, we do store. It's cooler in here. I would say it's probably 55 degrees in here. It stays cooler in this room. The lights actually add a little heat in the other room. But we still have crates of onions from last year, so that's been stored here. Some of the spaghetti squash. We have some of the paper stored for our composting process. Yeah, so in the summer we do a lot of pizzas. We have a wood-fired pizza oven in the classroom, which is a timber frame outside. But this is where we do a lot of the prep for that. We also, like I said, our processing. So like our tomatoes, we puree them all. They go in the freezer, which is just around the corner here. We probably still have 40 5-gallon buckets of puree. We do a lot of dehydrating with the students because it's a really easy thing to do with them. They can learn knife skills, safe knife skills. So they all get a knife, a cutting board. We dehydrate onions and tomatoes. As you can see, we have some left there. We also chop up the celery, we freeze it, so they get to be part of all of those processes with us. But it's a great space. They learn how to clean, wipe down tables, sanitize the equipment that they're using. Yeah, it's like I said, it's buzzing during harvest season, especially. We weigh all our harvests, so we keep scales here. We record all that data and use that for the next season. Now, Joe's asking what sustainability might mean to me. And I think about that a lot, and sustainability for me over my career as a conservationist and a farmer has sort of been diluted, I think, a bit, because the word gets overused. I mean, maybe not overused, but it's used a lot for a lot of different things. And I think, it involves so many things. And I think for me, as I age too, I think about the economic sustainability of most operations, and this is definitely one of those. But in order, I think, to be economically sustainable, there has to be this sort of like human component, right? This human and this relationship building between the humans that are running the operation, and that has to be sustainable, I think, above everything. And it comes from leadership. And if that leadership is there, I think everything just rolls. Well, maybe not just rolls, but there's definitely bumps. But I think with sustainable leadership in place, the rest of that comes. So then you have the economic sustainability, you have the sustainability of the landscape, the sustainability of the business, which is the economic piece, the sustainability of the soil. So I think just plugging in, that leadership, then plugging the right people in the right places of an organization or a business is a big part of sustainability in my mind. I think we all understand, sustainability was sort of born out of the land, right? Our environment, and well, how do we sustain our natural resources? That's where I think that we all learned about, what is sustainability, and we started using that word, but it's so much more than that. So anyway, it's very holistic to me, and you have to think about all those components together, at least to have a sustainable farm, for sure.
So tell me a little bit about the paintings.
Well, they bring in that human component. The artist's energy is here with us, and everyone smiles at the Swedish chef. It's just a happy, picture, and yeah, I mean, the vegetables are smiling at us. And I've used this in some photos that I've put out on social media for Wolf Ridge, and it always invokes this, joy and like happiness. So the fact that it's sort of this indelible mark inside of our workspace is really special. And it's been signed by the Carlton group, their spring break. They were here on their spring break in 2018. So yeah, they've definitely left their mark in one of the best ways possible. And it's here for every class, every event, any volunteer that comes to help us out gets to see this. And it's really, it really, I think we identified farm with it.
So you're going to take us out to the high tunnels now?
Yeah. So the the buildings on this farm didn't happen all at once. So it was definitely phased. We were, 10 years ago, this was all forest we'd be standing in. The timber frame here, that's our classroom. Again, it's a work in progress, but it definitely serves a purpose right now. We can do learning activities in there and have lunch. We also use it for storage, so we use it for many things at the moment. And we'll probably close in the sides at some point. Again, it's all phased. The building here that we're standing next to, again, the buzz of our operation, was one of the first to go in. Again, this had to be cleared first. The concrete had to be poured. So yeah, it's been an interesting process. Actually, the first building that went in was one of the high tunnels, if you call that a building. And that was because we knew that we had to grow some food somehow, and we need extended seasons here because we're a zone like 4A. So yeah, that was the first thing we started with. So the tunnels are all named. So blood was the first to go in, sweat and tears followed 2 years later. So the first growing season, so blood was put in 2013 and 2014. First harvest was 2015. Sweat and tears went in 2016, and actually they were harvested in 2016. So 2016 was a big harvest year. It went from maybe 1,000 pounds of food in 2015 to I think 8,000 pounds of food in 2016, the numbers I've seen, which are, and those are great numbers to have and look back on and see where you've been and how far you've come.
So before we walk in, you have to tell me about this contraption at the top here.
So we're not far from Lake Superior, and we oftentimes get gulls, herring gulls coming inland, and they love to perch on the high tunnels. Now the problem with that is their little pokey feet actually put holes in the plastic. And this particular tunnel has 2 layers of plastic with a bubble of air in between, so if they poke it, we lose our insulative space, and it doesn't perform like it should, and then the plastic flaps in the wind, and that causes stress on the structure itself. So we put up a galvanized wire runs down the ridge, and the idea behind that was, let's keep the gulls off. Let's also think about down the line, if we need to, we could electrify it just to, deter them once and then turn it off. But we also added strings on either side, and we're hoping that alone will take care of the problem. And so far so good. They've been perching on the classroom for the moment. So yeah, last year we did a lot of yelling and screaming at them and chasing them, and that was not effective.
Yeah.
There were some maybe tossed tomatoes, and that was not effective. So
Thanks for sharing. Lori will be pleased that you're working on that.
it's not raining in here, which, for better or for worse. We did let the snow come in over the winter. The plastic was actually off for the winter. We get heavy snowfalls, and that causes a lot of stress on the structures. It would actually probably collapse. Even though the pipe is 2-inch pipe, those snow loads are just too heavy for these structures. So, so we take the plastic off and store it, and then we put it back on about 2 weeks ago now. We've been measuring snow depths in here, and I think we had snow up to the sidewalls, to that first piece of metal there. You can see that the bows are attached to, and so it's gone down 2 feet already in 2 weeks. I bet we've lost a foot of snow a week, which is wonderful. And it's funny, we can start to see the beds under here and the cover crop. And the cover crop, this is rye, and it's slowly trying to come back. It probably didn't die. This is really hardy stuff under the snow. There's not much frost in here at all. The snow kept it insulated. We didn't really have a lot of cold before the snowfall. So this is great. We might be preparing beds next week. I'm hoping. That's what the plan is. So this is looking great. Last year this was our tomato tunnel. We rotate crops, so this year we'll have, I think we'll have peppers in here, and maybe peas and greens, roots. I can't remember exactly, but it won't be tomatoes.
And tell me the dimensions of this. It might be hard to tell in the image.
Sure. Yeah, so all of our high tunnels are 96 by 30. Is that right? I think that's right. So a lot of space to grow. Like I said, we produced, I was talking about tomatoes earlier, and we can produce about 4,000 pounds with 400 plants in a season. If we have a longer season, maybe a little bit more, but that seems to be typical. And then we use the above trellising wires to trellis anything that binds. So we can trellis things like the tomatoes, the cucumbers, and they all grow up. We prune them, we train them to grow up. And also things like melons, smaller squash, we could all grow up inside these tunnels, whereas outside, because it's so windy, and we get storms that come through, those trellises would just get blown down. But in these tunnels, we can do so much more and produce so much more food in a small space. So our capacity right now for growing is about a half acre. Last year we produced 14,000 pounds on a half acre. So that was really encouraging. So now we have this, like, okay, this is where we are. How much more can we do with the labor and resources that we have?
How many acres total do you anticipate this farm heading towards?
$1 million question.
Okay.
At this point, you know, who eats the food, right? And we have a lot of kids. And, you know, I constantly think about that. Like, kids, they're not very drawn to vegetables. It's sometimes a challenge for them. So when we bring them here from home, we put them in an uncomfortable space to begin with, and then we're serving them foods that they're not used to. So how else can we incorporate foods that they might more readily be comfortable with and accept? And I mean, kids love fruit. So I think that's sort of our next layer. So we've got all this annual production right now in vegetables. I think our next step is perennial fruit production, but that also takes infrastructure. So fencing is high on the list. We do have an exterior fence that encloses the entire 7 acres. It's not totally wildlife proof, and we have some mending to do in some sections. So if we do put in fruit trees, fruit shrubs, you know, deer will come to browse. So we'll have to figure out the best fencing to use for whatever crops we put in. We'll see. But I think we talked about sustainability, perennial. Yeah, I mean, they come back year after year, and especially if you maintain them. So I think for the sustainability of the labor, I think it's really smart to diversify and get some perennial fruits going along with our annual production.
Hey everybody, we're here at the North Shore Agroecology Center, and I'm walking up here. Stefan's going to give us a little bit of a tour and share a little bit about the history, the purpose, his life's passions, all that kind of good stuff. Thanks for visiting with us.
Hey, my pleasure.
Excellent.
Yes.
And so what I'm hoping to do is to spend just a little bit of time. I'm really curious about the deep winter greenhouse.
Okay. Well,
And
that's good because that's mostly what we have going on right now.
is there actually green stuff in there?
Oh, it's filled.
Oh, this is going to be lovely,
Yeah.
lovely. Because before we walk in there, I want to make sure everybody notices all the snow around, okay? That
And
at least...
send us the best wishes it goes away quickly. But yes, we have a lot of snow still outside, but the deep winter greenhouse has been running all winter long. And we can, once we go in, we can kind of talk about the design and where it came from. So
Excellent,
yeah.
excellent. Thanks again for taking this time for us.
My pleasure.
So first of all, before we end up walking over there, I wonder, who are you? And what is the OCA? Because it's connected to the OCA, right?
It is, yes.
Okay.
So the OCA is the Organic Consumers Association, and they're headquartered just a couple houses down. They're a national consumer advocacy around organic foods, lawful labeling of foods. They've been really big advocates around GMOs and but also just like general healthy eating, alternative practices for health and food. And lately, over the last 5 or 6 years, they've started a sister organization, Regeneration International, because they've been taking a much stronger interest in focusing on regenerative agricultural processes. And so this is one of the sites, which currently is covered under snow. It's their second on-the-ground site. The first one is actually down in Mexico, and they've been doing that for about 10 years now. And so this is their second project that started about 4 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so Mexico too.
Yes.
I'm not going to ask you anything about that. I just want to highlight that it's not just this. There's more.
Yeah.
Wow. That's
yeah,
cool.
I mean, it's they're a pretty large organization. They do have their fingers in lots of things. But I just came along because my fingers are in the soil.
Excellent. Excellent.
So,
Well, good. And your official title then is?
It kind of varies, but basically director/farm manager of the North Shore Agroecology Center.
Got it.
Yes.
Got it. Excellent. Cool.
So, yeah, so come on in. So you can see here, this is the outside of the deep winter greenhouse. It was built back in the fall of 2016, so about 4 years now. And it first came into operation the winter of 2017. It was part of a statewide project partnering with the University of Minnesota. And they built 5 of these prototypes around the state in different kind of climatic regions. We're the one that's up in the northeast section of Minnesota to trial out this concept of trying to grow food all winter long with as little energy as possible. And so they called this their 2.0 because it was kind of the second iteration of a first one that was done out in Milan, Minnesota. And they're currently in the process now of designing and initiating a whole new phase called 3.0, taking all the lessons they've learned from these 5 different ones and redesigning and trying to make it even more efficient while at the same time bringing down the cost. You know, just hearing back from both the farmers and just like what worked, what didn't work. So yeah, and so we're a unique setup here because basically, as we'll go inside and talk about it, it's basically a solar engine. And we've discovered that up in our area, because of our lovely lake, we get a lot more clouds throughout the winter, which then really reduces its ability to generate heat because it depends upon the sun to run. If the sun is shining, it can be 40 below zero outside and it will be roasting at like 60 or 70 inside with no heat whatsoever.
Wow.
But yeah, when that sun doesn't shine, we've discovered that's a big downfall. But we can go in and kind of take a look at it.
All right, so let's head on in.
Yeah, so come on into the deep winter greenhouse. It's a busy time of year inside the greenhouse because we're not only growing our greens, but I've got starts going. I'm getting in shipments of fruit trees that will be planted this summer. So it gets very full very quickly at this time of year. So come on in.
Oh, you gotta love this. Wow.
Yeah, so yeah, there's lots of different things kind of going on in here right now. But kind of to give you the kind of overview, what's typically running through most of the winter would be our gutter systems and then our main beds down. You can kind of see it's a bit of a horseshoe shaped bed. And that's predominantly what we're growing in all winter long. And so we get about 40 to 48 gutters that we hang throughout here. And, you know, of course, in the summer when the sun is so, in the middle of the winter when the sun is so low, you have the sunlight that like it hits the entire back wall here. So it's pretty amazing. It's designed very specifically for the dead of winter. So the angle of the sheet was calculated according to what that lowest angle of the sun would be, so we'd get the greatest light penetration. But basically, you know, if you know anything about like a solar oven and seen that work, that's basically what this is. It's a big solar oven that heats up in here. And then we have up here on top, you see these big pipes and tubes. So obviously heat rises. So up there, what it's doing is it's sucking all the heat from there, coming down this vent here, shoots down below, and underneath this entire floor is a big, like 4 feet deep of kind of crushed rock. And then the air, that hot air, flows through the crushed rock, warming it all day long. And then you can see the pipes that runs right along the window there. Then that air comes back out and it has holes and it just blows it up and through. And so it's this big cycle. And the only energy that takes is there's basically a bathroom fan that's sitting in that pipe. And that's the only thing that runs the entire system. So that's the energy that you would put into it. And again, we find that as long as we get even a good three to 3.5 days of good strong sun in the winter, it will pretty much keep this above 40 degrees no matter how cold it is outside. We do have a backup heater up above your head there. That will kick in if we start to drop down into the low 40s. and that's what uses a lot of energy. So if we have a real cloudy winter or a cloudy stretch, that does pop on a lot because there's just not enough solar energy in the day to warm up the building and warm up that rock layer. So it's kind of it's referred to as like a climate battery, and that's a great way to think about it. So after about 2 to 3 days of cold weather outside, clouds, it's like the alternator is not recharging the battery, and that's when you have a problem, and the heat has to kick on. From what I've heard, the more southern Minnesota examples of this, it's been running excellent for them because they tend to have sunnier winters down there. So,
And that was, you mentioned it already, because of Lake Superior.
yeah, I think that's one of the things that that's what I can think about is like we've got a big lake, we get a lot of clouds that roll off of there. Even on days it's like you'll look at the weather app and it's like supposed to be sunny and it's kind of like this misty fog all day long.
Yeah.
So that's one of our complications up here. It's like they were all worried about how cold it got, but the reality is it's how sunny it isn't.
It isn't. Right.
Okay, so yeah, one of our big lessons that we've kind of learned, and we worked with the U of M for about the first 2.5 seasons that we ran this, we did a lot of different types of crop trials, trying to find what grows best, how much are we producing. They did a lot of different soil, kind of soil type experiments, trying to see if there are certain types of soil mixes that we could use. And certainly one of the things we find is there are 3 distinct seasons. You've got your fall and your diminishing with the sun going down, like kind of getting lower and the days shortening. You have your dead of winter, which is kind of your December, I'd say late November through early February, and then February is what they call the expansion phase, when that sun starts getting stronger, gets higher, and it's very fascinating because the crops literally live by that. You can see their growth rate slow down and stop in the winter, but once you hit like February 2nd, it's amazing. The plants just start responding to the additional sunlight and they just explode. So what we've discovered is what we're trying to do is use as little extra energy as possible, so we're trying not to use lights. I've discovered because of our incessant clouds, we kind of need to work with lights in the middle of the winter, otherwise things just won't grow for us at all. But what we do work with crops is we use a lot of different Asian greens. Like these are mixes of, this is Tokyo Bacana and this is Koji. They're both from Johnny seeds. And they're different types of Asian greens that will, even without additional light in the winter with our clouds, they'll actually keep putting on some pretty decent production. The other one that really surprised me, and that's why you'll see them here, is the rainbow chard down in the beds. Whereas kale comes to an absolute dead stop and will not even grow in the winter. With no additional lights, that chard just keeps on putting out leaves all winter long. So that's, even though it's not the real popular crop, sometimes we have to work with what will actually work in our system. Yeah, so right now I'm in the process of actually taking a bunch of that out. So this is only about half of what was in here, just because now they're growing a lot faster and there's only so much that we can actually sell locally. Because again, it's not a real popular crop. But yeah, so then what we do with our food is we sell it down at the Finland Co-op, which is one of the oldest running co-ops in Minnesota. And it's more of a general store, but they do groceries, and we've been working with the general manager to kind of get weekly or twice a week deliveries of greens down there. And usually we'll probably sell about 5 to 7 bags of lettuce greens a week and 3 to 4 bags of chard a week. So for a pretty small population, that's pretty good.
It is good.
Yeah, it is good.
Yeah. And I'm going to have to make sure to add an image right about here of the Finland Co-op.
So then, the other part of the goal here is not only doing food research, but it certainly is, as we continue to develop the project, it's working with education. And so, as we get further down the road here, we want to start offering different types of workshops. We're working closely with the Finland Food Chain Project, which is a new project that started late last year. where a group of interested parties came together and decided we wanted to create a food hub here in Finland. We got a real nice grant from the Bush Foundation to support this, and part of that is education, part of that's addressing infrastructure, part of that is just planning. And so there's a group of people that are working together on that, and we certainly play a role. And once our bigger system continues to get more involved and evolved, we'll definitely want to be doing different types of workshops from things, because we have bees on site, we have mushrooms on site, we have sugar maples on site, putting in several different types of fruit trees and shrubs and nut trees. Part of it is our goal is to experiment with lots of different types of things, find new varieties that might be working, while at the same time addressing the fact that the climate is changing up here. It's getting warmer, although the winters are getting cloudier. So it's interesting and so we have to, when you think about creating a perennial system, you have to think, okay, what do we want 10, 15 years down the road? We've already seen changes in the last decade. What's the next decade or two? Because when you put in fruit trees, they could be around 40, 50, even 100 years, depending upon the tree. And so we're trying to trial out different varieties and trees that might not typically have worked here, but now we're starting to be able to find a niche. And at the same time, just creating a really diverse ecosystem with flowers, herbs, fruit trees, not only for our honeybees, but also for all the pollinators. Lots of different types of bumblebees love hanging out, and so that's part of kind of what we're doing. It's education, it's research, it's demonstration, and it's food production.
That's awesome.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Well, here I am at the beginning of the trail to head up to Round River Farm. It's April 7th, 2020, and we still have quite a bit of snow. I'm supposed to meet them in about 40 minutes. Don't know how long it'll take me to walk their driveway. Actually, I don't even remember how long their driveway is, but in the conditions, it might take me a half an hour. They're off the grid, which sounds oh so romantic, but David tells the story of when they were going to have their first baby, and it was the middle of winter, and they needed to sled all the way down this hill to get to the hospital. It wasn't so romantic then. Well, that's where I'm headed, up that way and around the corner and the next corner and the next corner. I'll be there in a little bit, and we'll get to meet David and Lisa, hopefully. Well, here we are at Round River Farm. Give you a chance to look around here, just to get a sense. I see Lisa over there working in the snow. We'll go see what's up. Hello.
Hi there. You may wonder why I'm digging in my garden in the middle of the winter.
It's not the middle of winter, it's spring.
Oh, it's spring and there's still 2 feet of snow. I'm trying to find the 2 beds of carrots that froze in the ground before I got them harvested last winter, or last fall.
That's hilarious.
Because we have extra people in the house, we've gone through almost all of our carrots.
You gotta feed them. Oh my gosh.
I can't find the beds. It's thawed now because it froze hard early last fall.
Yeah?
And then I had got them on the ground. I can't find them. It's beds 5 and 6 that it's thawed. It's definitely thawed. If I can find the right beds, they're here, I'm sure.
You can find them. Well, this is Round River Farm, huh?
Yep, Round River Farm.
You know, when we first came here and made our little homestead, you know, it was, we did what we can do here, but the vision, especially David's vision, I'm much more content just here on the hill. You know, I have what I'd like to do, but I really prefer to be by myself doing it. David, though, his vision, and I, you know, was totally supportive of it in the background, was to create these extended farm projects in the area. And this is not farming country, so it was not like it was easy to do, or people definitely even like were skeptical, rightly so. You know, like the board at Wolf Ridge was not on board with the farm for quite a while, and David just kept plugging away at it and doing it on his own time until it finally became something that seemed viable and valuable too. And so that's it. And now the fact that it has gone on and continued in such a fabulous way with Sarah is just like, that's like, you can't, I mean, that sort of ping of satisfaction to see something continuing beyond, you know, that was planted initially by just a vision is really satisfying. And the OCA happened very similarly. Rose and Ronnie were a little bit more on board with it because they believe in it, you know, just intuitively themselves. But, you know, David just started with this vision, and Stefan has run with it beyond what David could ever have done, and that in its own way too, you know. And both of them fit these niches in the food system, you know, in that the educational part at Wolf Ridge, and then the permaculture part at OCA, and here we're just the homestead and seeds, you know. But you know, it's like these 3 farms could sort of encapsulate what an agricultural system needs, you know, the different resources and types in their our little microcosm of Finland, Minnesota, which is, like I said, not agriculture country at all. So, but I'm thrilled to see Stefan and Sarah running with those planted seeds there. So, and I imagine David is likewise. He's on to new visions now. So regionally. So
what's really cool though with being able to design the initial farms, it's something we had a unique opportunity because we didn't have any farms to speak of. And so being able to design, okay, here's this type of farm. Let's make another one like the permaculture farm and the deep winter greenhouse, so that we could build the different parts of the food system organized. Whereas our country is laissez-faire, we'll do it all and then it's competition and so we had the unique opportunity, even though we have the most challenging environment, that's why we had the opportunity, was we could start farms that have different niches that can fulfill it. And the funny thing is, I said to someone back when we were just starting the Wolf Ridge farm, I said, you know, Wolf Ridge programming will be gone, but the farm will keep running. And with the coronavirus,
Oh yeah.
the students are gone and the farm is still running.
Yeah.
So I was like, I didn't think I'd see it this early, but it's kind of revealed itself because
You've cursed us.
because that farm can feed a good percentage of the community of Finland's fresh vegetable needs. I actually just did part of my research in the past was looking at, can we feed ourselves in Northeast Minnesota? And I just made a document. You can just change the population and it'll go through how many cows you need, how many chickens you need, everything. And so for Finland, it only needs about 11 acres to 12 acres of land for fresh vegetables, and Wolf Ridge has 3. And so it wouldn't take, we almost have the ability to grow all our own fresh vegetables right now with the farms that are here. But there's also fresh milk. So altogether, Finland needs about
processed food too, and grains.
But Finland needs about 50 acres for the fresh milk, fruit, and vegetables. And then all the rest of the balanced diet, the processed foods, the grains, all that, need another 200 acres.
Wow.
So 250 acres could feed Finland. So the idea with that document is to have people do this for every community to help design and imagine what their food
Yeah,
system
I
could
think
look
as much
like.
as anything, it's to be able to visualize what it would take. You know, it's like it's
9
it's,
cows, we could do
it's
that
like,
in
oh, that
Finland.
seems
Dairy
more
cows,
reasonable. Yeah, it's
35 beef cows, we can do that in
Yeah.
Finland.
Yeah,
That's
so-
possible.
Otherwise, it feels very vague, and you don't know. Yeah, it just gives something a goal or a spot to be. So.
So we met in college, and this was the place we came to here in northern Minnesota, and we've been here for 32 years now. And we're going to be here until we die, probably be buried somewhere out there.
Our son agreed to wrap
yep.
us in a shroud.
Yep, our son and daughter-in-law said, yeah, they'll bury us, but we'll make sure we dig in the fall. We'll dig it in the fall just in case, you never know. So, but we grow a lot of things in greenhouses because of our climate. It's short growing season, and what we're on is 2 feet of snow on top of 2 feet of soil that's thawed because of this particular year, on top of a planet of granite. And we're growing our food on that. We've been able to increase our soil, grow a lot of food in a small area. So we've been feeding our neighbors from Two Harbors, Duluth to Grand Marais for the last 20 years, well, and for 30 years partially. Next year we'll continue feeding our closest neighbors through a farmer's market, but we're also shifting our farm to seed production. So we have like 35 different types of varieties of plants that we'll be growing, some to grow out to get enough seed so that next year when we grow it out the following year, we'll have enough seed to offer. Some of it's not going to do well, and depending on the falls, which have become much wetter, it'll be very challenging to save seeds. So we're going to find out. So we're going to have some in the greenhouse, some outside, multiple layers. So we've redesigned the farm setup to focus on seed saving, and then we'll grow food on the side. So that's a shift. We've always been growing food and then doing seed work on the outside of that. So
It's kind of a full circle because when we first came here, we had just come from working at a seed research farm in New Mexico and had a bunch of seeds with us, but it was not. We didn't have the skill or the time or the ability to save them at that point. So it kind of feels like after 30 years, we're coming around to what we originally, our interest was with growing things. But food production has always been our primary focus. And so doing the CSA really was important in that it was feeding our neighbors and our local things. And now I realize, though, I was thinking about it when David went through your questions earlier, the shift to doing seeds now I realize is even more so during this coronavirus thing, it's kind of a way of, as we've gotten older, of hope in the future, because seeds are something that have to be continued. It's one thing to grow an annual crop, you feed your neighbors, and it's great instant gratification sort of after a season of work, but with seeds you have to have hope that it'll be continued. I mean, that's how we got the seeds and varieties, and which I didn't realize that until we actually started doing it and I started thinking about it. It's just that sort of continuation at this point in life and time, and it seems really important. I have no idea, neither one of our sons wants to do the farming, but the hope is somebody else will continue it, and seeds are kind of the symbolic way of us shifting into that. Personally, has been a shift in my mentality of the future. So no big enlightening thing there, but it just was an interesting shift from going from the annual production to sort of focusing on the future.
well, that's one last thing we can try and do.
It's also just a fun challenge. Not that it's not fun to grow vegetables, but it wasn't as challenging as it used to be once you figure out how to do it.
Same thing year
So,
after year.
It's like, okay, I'll just pull out my plans from last year and just shift them around a little bit. Now it's something brand new and challenging, kind of like you were saying about retirement. Is no retirement for us, never has been in the plan.
Yeah.
Have to have a new challenge, and that's something we can do on a scale that our bodies can do too. It's a little bit more fine-tuned. in the sense of not the grander scale with a lot of, it'll still be a lot of work, but yeah. So
But
the
yeah,
challenge is fun.
kind of when we started though, we started in, we were the second CSA. Now there's dozens of CSAs.
We've got to be unique.
And so, no, not that, but now
Yeah.
what's still needed, what's really needed for
Yeah.
a local food system is seeds. And so now we're working with other farms to develop a farmer co-op owned seeds, so we can have our own control of our seed and that are adapted to this particularly challenging environment.
Which actually has been, I feel like we're just a couple years behind.
We
where
are
should
2
have,
years
because
behind.
Now, I don't know if Lori noticed it when she ordered seeds. Seed companies are out.
No.
Seeds. There
Yes.
has been a run on seeds because everybody is planning on growing their own things.
No.
And so, like Johnny's Seeds, which is a big company, large company for the smaller seed companies, but they are only selling to commercial growers now until the 15th or 14th of April because they want to be sure to supply their commercial growers first, and then they'll open it up again. Seed Savers shut down until they finish. We haven't even gotten our order from Seed Savers, so now I'm like, man, I should have ordered earlier. But it also makes me realize, man, a couple years ago, if we were like ready now with our own seeds, I would feel
Yeah, we'd
a
be
lot
sold
more
out right now.
secure. Yeah, well, I would just be a lot more. I'm not talking the money part, just the security part. I realized, gosh, even though we have this organic, sustainable farm, and we can do an awful lot just ourselves. We've got these sort of. We don't really require the
Without
grid
the
for anything,
seeds.
but without the seeds, that sort of we don't. I mean, we always knew that intellectually, but it's really hit viscerally now. With this demand on seeds going, outpacing what the current supply is, and so it's just like, well, I guess we're not too late, but it was like, yeah, we should have done this a couple years earlier, and then we'd be really set. But
We're losing our touch.
yeah, I guess so. But anyways, it's not like they're out. It's just they can't keep up with orders and things. So so we have time. But it's interesting. It's an essential part of a sustainable food system that people don't think about.
Yeah.
Having those seed stores that are adapted to where you're growing too.
This would be another view.
We can just call it the dome.
The dome.
The dome.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Spirit hiking trails on that follows the lake edge, and 1 mile past that ridge is Lake Superior.
Oh my gosh, that's
But
beautiful.
that's why we still have snow.
Yeah.
Because we're in the snow belt.
Drifts.
And what you see in front is the orchard espalier, being designed to look like a grapevines with wires.
Because it allows for what's it called?
Alley cropping.
Alley cropping.
So we're
Between-
doing
we have
alley
beds
cropping
between the-
here. In between the rows of, you get a lot of production that's easily accessible, lots of airflow, lots of light. And then between those rows, which are 12 feet apart, down the center is a garden bed to grow food. So there's a couple hundred trees in there. And then we've got fruit further down. So we're just about to wiring, and next weekend we're going to finish pruning.
Yeah, this weekend we have to prune.
One of the cool projects we're working on now with Round River Farm and the Wolf Ridge Farm is agrophenology. And with Wolf Ridge has had 32 years of phenological observations. So we had a whole record of dozens and dozens of different animals, trees, bugs, and when they make these changes, these pheno changes. And so these two farms are looking at the phenological indicators that best determine when it's a good time to plant a crop. And so we're now in our 3rd year of the research, and we've identified about 25 different phenological indicators that best mimic the natural conditions, like crows don't. They come
Sure.
early when it's cold. They come late when it's warm. They come whenever the hell they want to come.
Yeah.
Because crows do things
As
like that.
crows do. But other things are much more in tune with moisture in the soil, and so we've gone a lot to plants. But this is our 1st year we're using a calendar to determine when we plant. So sap flow was the first thing, and then we had the robin, and now we're doing certain seedlings. And then we have, the next up is the alder, speckled alder, catkin swelling. And so using the phenological indicators to determine our planting time. So this is our 3rd year of a Minnesota Department of Ag research. And we've been doing it in conjunction with each other. And so that'll be published later this year. So it's kind of an interesting project. And I'm hoping we can do more things with the 3 farms together, whether it's different aspects of retreats, work camps, or philosophy, or whatever, to see what could come with the opportunities that the 3 farms within this unique community pose.
Cool. Cool. So pretty. Look at, that's the one that needs
Clean air.
clean air. A clean air indicator.
It's mine.
So we can go over here. Can't see the plants.
Well,
Probably not very well.
No.
I got to see some really pretty plants in the deep winter greenhouse, and I got to see a bunch of them that Sarah was working
Yeah,
on.
inside.
Yeah, so
So we can go.
we know that that's what's inside the. I'm leaving that in. I'm totally leaving that in.
You're on top of my shoe. Well, I'm enjoying it.
Oh goodness.
That's what happens. We're not used to being so close.
I like this social distancing. Keeps me safer.
Oh goodness.
Yeah. Oh, yes. I just planted the first seeds in there. Hopefully they'll start growing. Yeah, we don't have the nice deep winter greenhouse or even a heated room.
Right.
We have to make do with what we have.
Yeah.
But those are planted to greens. In a month or so, we'll have just enough fresh greens for ourselves before we have them outside.
Cool.
Just try this reappearing after we.
Well, that I threw out of the building.
Yeah.
Boy, it's falling apart now.
You know, I think that flock of robins flew from Wolf Ridge to here.
Oh, really?
Because there were about 30 of them at Wolf Ridge when I went in this morning, and just seeing them all flying around here. Maybe it's not at all, but
Well, they definitely are. They have come in force
yeah.
now in the last 2 weeks. So only one hive survived, which is amazing in and of itself. But even more amazing because I had to going into winter. I did nothing. I had a bad summer and fall last year. I didn't get my carrots dug. I didn't get my bees even wrapped up. And so I just had given up on them. And I came out a couple days ago to clean up and get ready for the new packages.
Oh.
But, and I saw a bee flop onto the snow. And I'm like, wait, how can there be a live bee?
You
And
know, these are leaning quite forward.
yeah, I know it needs to be re-leveled.
Yeah.
But then they all came flying out. So I have a hive. I have more coming. I ordered some more, but bees are hard here. Usually there wouldn't be that many boxes because I just abandoned them in the fall. But they made it.
Yeah.
That gives me hope, I guess. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, whoa, it wasn't that hard of a winter. A lot of snow, but not very hard. And they survived anyways.
That's great.
Terminal bud.
A few days, but yeah, I was like,
But this is just an opening in that swamp. So it's not just this water. It's the whole system.
well, it's a swamp, but what was the beaver doing? I don't know where it came from
Well,
or where it
he's
was
going
going.
looking.
Yeah, but it was so surprising to.
We did
I'm
a
not-
snowshoe up to
used
the
to
ridge with all 7 of us last week.
It'll be a trek now with the slush.
Yeah, it will be.
There was an original well here from the original homestead, so we knew it was spring fed because that's where they got their water from. But we don't have it with our water being pumped by the water windmill. We don't have, unless the wind blows, our tanks aren't full. And
We couldn't do any of the CSA without this.
Yeah, so we
Got
had
it.
to have a source of water to pump to irrigate things. And so now that's where it gets a little low sometimes in the dry years. Like we do have to watch
It'll go
it.
down,
It'll go down
couple
a
feet.
foot or two.
Okay.
But there's always water in it.
but that's a 5-acre couple feet. You can see our water. The pond's under there.
And this comes from the roof.
Drainage around the house.
Got it. Okay.
So there's 3 tanks, 2,200 gallons. Here.
And we just dip water out of it.
Look, it's melting too over here, Lee.
Yeah, I see that. That's good.
So, you can see the tomatoes aren't doing too well.
Yeah, it's gonna freeze tonight. You better cover your tomatoes.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe we could walk through and go to the.
Go around the edge there. And there's already a trail. I walked there yesterday. Well, I guess you're not on the trail.
Need some repairs. So you can see we've got divide up down the middle now.
Okay.
So the 50 by 50 squares for the seed production.
Oh, okay.
We'll isolate things enough.
So on the fields to the right, every far bed of these fields will have a pea variety. And they only need about 25 feet of separation for purity. They're mostly self-pollinating. And then there'll be beans and squash, and then 4 different tomatoes and 4 different lettuces and 5 different lettuces out here. Yeah, so everything fits into this new plan. And our new fencing go around that edge for the snooker here. Got it in the fall. I don't know. I'll have to get through the solar. Anything, Lise? Did you want to like chat about any of the area, or?
You know, both.
It's the waiting season. I feel like
Yeah.
there's nothing. We're waiting for spring. The robins help let us know it is coming. As soon as the snow is melted enough off the plastic, and when we can get out there without snowshoes, we'll flip the plastic on. We take it down. Well, theoretically, if we took it all the way off, it would last even better. But we can use it for 5 or 7 years if we at least if it doesn't collapse. So.
Yeah.
Start. Where are we going?
Well, what's interesting is that neither one of our kids have decided they want to farm. They appreciate the food and I think even Tremaine appreciates how he was raised. Sort of. As he gets older, he more appreciates it. But and I actually don't. I know that recently I've kind of come to terms with that. Not that we never expected of them, but because it's not a very easy way to make a living. We never made a living completely off of it, but you work hard for very little money. There's a lot of easier ways to make cash. But now I realize, and I don't know, somebody will farm and grow things, I'm sure. It doesn't have to be our kids. But I realize as I think about it now that though the cash part was always important for us, we grew for ourselves anyways. I'm rambling with this, but I realized that what COVID and thinking about the future now and with the seeds and things, I realized, yeah, the cash part is important, but really and I knew this from the beginning, but we had turned into where it was more like we wanted to make it a successful business. But I am going back now to where it's like, no, the main reason is that we know how to grow our own food. We know how to work with the land. We know how to pay attention to the changes happening. So that's the future is going to be changing, not just because of the virus and the changing economies. The environment is changing. And if that's just happening and you're not really watching it or aware, it's so much scarier. And I realize by farming and by being involved, even if it isn't a great way to make a living, I feel so much more connected and able to adapt to the future. And so I would say, I mean, this probably doesn't really answer your question all the way, but it has a value in and of itself, whether the economy says so or not. I think it's going to be even more valuable now because of what's happening economically. People will appreciate. That's why seeds are disappearing. You know, people realize the importance of growing food. We've always felt that, but the economy sometimes
Kind of
has ignored that and pushed it away. And I realized I had absorbed some of that, you know, and when I was like weighing, well, we afford to keep farming? Do we need to get these other jobs? And now I've come back to that sort of idealistic, but practical also idea that knowing how to feed yourself is really, really important. And so if you can figure out a way to do that and also survive economically in whatever the economic conditions are at that time, it's really valuable and fulfilling. And I feel a lot less scared about the future because of it, probably. So that's what I would say.
And I would say one of the things is to make sure you find a good partner. Not just the fact that I have a very good partner, but it's really hard to do that alone, farming, and to do that whole work and the challenges and the frustrations, but also the expertise can be shared.
Yeah.
So you don't. There's so much to learn. The learning parts of it well, and letting the other fill in the well part on other aspects of the farming is really important. I think the other thing is to be less worried about how much you can produce and more worried about how much energy and both your own and economics is it going to take to produce. So it's not really how much you produce, it's how much is different between how much you spend and how much you make. That's the real difference to worry about. So what scale? Our scale was small enough. We didn't have a lot of tractors. Well, we don't have any tractors, all these things. So that higher cost, then you need to make that much more. So it's not how much you make, it's the difference. So even our small little 1 acre, 3 acres of vegetables and fruit, we make more money than a 6,000 acre farm out west. And that's the criminal part of farming. It's really tough. So how do you design it so you make it as efficient as possible and as low input as possible for the output? And to do all that is make your soil, whatever you've chosen to cultivate, just make it as rich as possible. Just grow your soil, and then the soil will grow the plants. So those are things that I would stress, and we did that, and it has worked out. If it didn't work out, I wouldn't be saying that.
And diversity, I would say, kind of fits sort of in that. Just diversity, and you know, especially in a changing world on so many levels, not putting all your eggs in one basket, so to speak.
Right. And
you know, it's just you can't count on things for lots of different reasons, and so having a diverse, just like in a forest or whatever, the diversity is what keeps the forest intact. Little things can change amongst it, but the forest itself stays intact.
And that
goes the same.
That goes the economic viability of you.
Yeah.
So one of you, 2 or 3 or 4, one of you or parts of you should have part-time jobs or other vocations as a diversity of income. So
we did that very intentionally, both because our land required it, because we just don't have that much of it, so it was never probably ever going to be like enough to live on. But also because intentionally, I didn't want to have the farm be our only source of income, because you make different decisions and we wanted to make the right decisions for the right reasons, not because we had to make money. So then we grow a crop that's going to sap the soil unnecessarily, or we don't have space for this or that.
We don't spend the money to put the nutrients back in.
So we always very intentionally had it. You know, sometimes it's looked at that so much income, off-farm income, is required for any farm, not just us. For any farm, it's statistically, most farmers have to have
88% of farms last year lost $1,800.
And that's kind of considered a negative, but at the same time, it could be seen as a positive if the reason for doing that is to make it so that you can make better decisions for the land and for the longer term vision of the farm. And it's not just economic decisions, which are sometimes very detrimental environmentally. Or
survival mode is not good for soil, not good for forests, not good for resources if you're just surviving.
If it's just, if you have to have that cash from that activity, you tend to sometimes compromise more than you should.
Hunger is a great motivator to do whatever. And so trying to diversify your income, the community of people you are around, the type of agriculture, and the different entrepreneurs parts of the agriculture system. And whatever you do, make sure you find snakes in your gardens and that you hear
Share.
birds.
Share the.
You have
fruits of
the
your labor.
examples of a balanced ecosystem.
Yeah.